Well, well, well. Shopping for a car?
Yep, Carvana made financing a car as smooth as can be.
Oh, yeah?
I got pre-qualified instantly and had real terms personalized just for me.
Doesn't get much smoother than that.
Well, I got to browse thousands of car options on Carvana, all within my budget.
Doesn't get much smoother than that.
It does. I actually wanted a car that seemed out of my range, but I was able to add a cosigner and found my dream car.
It doesn't get much...
Oh, it gets smoother. It's getting delivered tomorrow.
Visit Carvana.com or download the app to get pre-qualified today.
With Lucky Land Slots, you can get lucky just about anywhere.
Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to... Has anyone seen the bride and groom?
Sorry, we're here. We were getting lucky in the limo and we lost track of time.
No, Lucky Land Casino, with cash prizes that add up quicker than a guest registry.
In that case, I pronounce you lucky.
Play for free at LuckyLandSlots.com. Daily bonuses are waiting. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18+. Terms and conditions apply. See website for details.
Welcome to Pretty Lies and Alibis. Let's seek the truth and travel the long road to justice together. What you know, Alibis? Happy Tuesday. Welcome to another episode of Pretty Lies and Alibis. I'm Gigi, and yeah, I took a 3-day weekend, and it was actually really nice. I did a few things podcast related, but nothing too heavy. I had to take my Grammy yesterday to the physical therapist. She has a collapsed vertebrae in the bottom of her spine, so we're trying some things, but ultimately she's gonna have to see a surgeon, I think. So send Grammy some good juju. All right. First and foremost, I want to give a big thank you to HLN, Susan Hendricks, and Joey Jackson for a super fun time Sunday morning at 7:40ish, I think was actually when it aired. But we talked about the Lori Vallow Chad Daybell case, about competency, and also about the kids' bodies. And apparently when Susan Hendricks mentions, do you think that Lori and Chad are going to turn on each other? Joey and I both make like a face together. So I need to go back and watch that. A lot of people have said it. Behind me, I've got to figure out where to put these, but these are the honor wall. So I wanted to put up cases that we've covered. So here I have the Wagner trial, the Roden family. And then over here, these are the cases, some of the cases that we've covered. Not all, because unfortunately they don't all fit. I mean, it's just that, but so you can see some of the cases that have been covered on this podcast, and I just want to have a face in here. And somebody, whoever said honor wall, thank you very much. Makes a lot more sense, but it looked a little cluttered back there. I'm not sure how I'm going to do it. I really wish I'd have put that logo over, but I was trying to center it. I don't know. Might redo it. I'm really thinking about getting a real logo sign, neon logo sign back there. Also, merchandise. I'm not done yet. But this is one of the new ones. I just got the sample today. And so it's a really comfy sweatshirt. But I'm going to tell you, they run big. Now, I washed it and I found that it shrunk really to about the size that it needed to be for me. So when I first got this, it looked like an extra large, but it shrunk a lot. So I think if you see when you open your package that they run big, just throw it in the wash and dry it. And it'll come down a good size. So I did have some people reach out about the size. I'm going to be kicking that store back off probably tomorrow. I've added some new stuff. I've just had fun playing around with the t-shirt maker. All right. So song fact of the day. The Sound of Silence, written by Paul Simon when he was 21. Great song. One of my favorites. I have a lot of favorites. You're going to hear me say that probably every time that I talk about a song, but I have no capacity for like when I'm full of favorites. There's no end to it. So great song. This song was on their 1964 debut album, Wednesday Morning 3 a.m., which was a huge failure. And it actually led to them breaking up. So Garfunkel, he went back to college. Simon left for England to try to start a solo career. But producer Tom Wilson never lost faith in that song and rearranged the music. So he added the drums and the electric guitar to the original acoustic version, which the original was all acoustic, nothing else. And that led to the song we know today. The republished single, huge, overnight sensation, #1, top 100 Billboard charts. Simon and Garfunkel were like, hey, let's get back together, ride this wave. And as you know, we got some great songs out of that reunion. Mrs. Robinson, The Boxer, Bridge Over Troubled Water. We could go on and on. But I thought that was interesting because a lot of the songs that we cover sometimes immediately wasn't a hit, or it's funny how things come back and become a hit all these years later. So anyways, all right. Number one with the Wagner case, really good news for the media. There was an appeal by the media about being able to show exhibits and film exhibits to show people watching the stream. And he agreed with the media. So that's good for us in that we will get to see some more of the evidence that's being presented. I don't think they'll show bodies. If they do, I definitely am not going to put that back up there for people to see their limits. If pretty much my go-to is if the mainstream media puts it out there, I'm okay putting it out there. But it said with regards to the supplemental media order and the request to photograph the shoe print exhibits, the court did not conduct a hearing, make appropriate findings, or enter its decision on the record. Administrative Judge Michael D. Hess, who was the appellate judge, said it's unclear whether any hearing was conducted regarding the initial media order, but the entry fails to make any findings. The Ohio Constitution contains a guarantee that all courts shall be open and that Ohio's court rules require that the judge assigned to the trial or hearing shall permit the broadcasting or recording by electronic means and the taking of photographs in court proceedings that are open to the public as provided by I keep wanting to say Idaho, y'all. I'm on Valo time. Ohio law. Should Judge Deering or the prosecution wish to restrict the media's recording access in the future, the trial court must hold a hearing and make findings on the record in accordance with the factors above. The supplemental media order and paragraph 16 of the initial media order are hereby stricken and deemed unenforceable. Any pending motions are denied as moot. So woot woot. We're going to get to see a little more of those crime scenes. If you remember the first few days, we saw some of the inside of Chris Sr.'s. And I think probably what will happen now is they'll get some pictures of the stuff we've missed and we'll put out there. All right. So listen, y'all. Okay. Today could have been a 5-minute stipulation and we would have been done with all this madness at 9:10 a.m., but it went on until after 4. They could have said this, y'all, and we'd have been done. Both sides stipulate that they found an arsenal of weapons on the Flying W farms, as well as shell casings. After being sent to the BCI lab, both sides stipulate that none of the weapons or shell casings found on Flying W farms are connected in any way to the murder of the Rodens or Hannah Gilley. And then we could have had some witnesses that actually kept us awake. I love the guys that witnessed today, but listen, you can only look at so many guns and here, yeah, we couldn't connect it. Okay, so I don't know, y'all. I don't know how this ties in. Some people say it's about the list that Jake wrote saying that they had some of the guns on this, quote, wish list of guns. If you remember, there was that really long list that had everybody's names and what guns either they owned or wanted, I guess. You could have said that in 2 minutes, y'all. I bet that jury mentally was checked out by like 10:05. So I don't know. It was a whole day. And I literally, y'all, I planned like the rest of my life during that time, including my funeral. Okay, so right out of the gate, there was an argument about this gun list from Jake's phone. And believe me, I'm sitting here at 9:05 saying, man, the defense is starting the day out like this. But by like 1 p.m., I was like, dude, the defense was so right. Like, we shouldn't have been. Why? All right. But they say some of it is a wish list. And the defense says it's 15 or 20 guns that weren't used in the murders, and the list isn't relevant. 100% agree with you there, Parker. Pardon me while I pass out, because I just agreed with Parker. 100% over. Yeah, no doubt. Jake told these guys where the murder weapons were, and they recovered what they could. So I don't know why we had to go through this whole day when none of it was deemed relevant to the murder of 8 people. Anyways, they said that the prosecution said Jake will testify that George points the SKS at Chris Sr. We know he froze. This will come in later in a recording when Jake and George are driving the truck. And then they say also that this gun list is a wish list. But clearly there are some guns on there. But maybe they bought them after. I don't know. They recovered a 9mm from Flying W, saying it was a replacement for a gun used that night by George. You can't prove that, though. The defense says Jake doesn't mention in his proffer anything about bulletproof vests either. He says the guns are legal. There's nothing in George's past that would prevent him from legally owning it. Now, here's the thing. We've always heard Fredricka bought those bulletproof vests. They didn't even come in today. There was an objection. I think there was a sidebar. All these years we've talked about the bulletproof vest, didn't even come in. So the prosecutor says the state should be able to talk about any gun on the list to help the jurors connect the dots. But I'm going to tell you, they were not connecting dots today. They were probably counting like ceiling tiles. It was boring. The judge allows it, says he'll instruct the jury about this. And here we go. Now, look, don't get me wrong. These BCI agents are awesome. I like every one of them. I think they've done a great job. We had Agent Ryan Scheider up first. And I'm going to show you guys their pictures. Let's see here. Okay, so I'm just going to pop up their little pictures when it's time for them to testify. So you can see who. Maybe I'm not. Maybe I'm just not going to do that. Sorry, I'm having to move some things down. I did have their pictures. Okay. All right. Well, that's just not going to work. Okay. So we had Scheider up, and all these guys have been up at least one time. He was there for the search warrants on May the 10th and the 12th on Peterson Road. And he's the guy essentially that kind of goes in, and he was over the scene at this point. So there we go. Got him up. Okay. I'm going to take these off after. So the very top, Scheider. He's the guy that was up first. We'll just leave him up. Sorry, y'all. Look, I'm out of practice. I've been out for 3 days. So they start off with the Walmart receipt for the shoes bought back, right before the murders in April. And they show the price tag with the SKU number of the shoes in a 10.5 and an 11 wide. He reads the SKU number from the receipt that matches the tag on the shoes. It's going to be the same at any Walmart in the country. During the searches, they were looking for items on Jake's gun list as potential contributors to the murder. So we know they didn't find anything at Peterson Road or where the trailers were other than the shell casings there on Peterson did match. They asked Jake for his phone back in April. He told them no. May 3rd, they talked to him, didn't ask about his phone. And he said they didn't ask again, not to tip him off, because they were getting a search warrant. He knew they would get the phone, and he just didn't want to give him a heads up to delete things or destroy the phone or anything like that. So they talk about the media release a month after the search warrants at Peterson, asking anyone who had information, firearms, ammo sales, car sales. This was held June 19th of 2017. So you got to remember, they're still working this case hard 14 months, almost 14 months after the murders. And they're asking people, if you dealt with them in any way with these items, please get in touch. So he also said the Wagners contacted him and asked what they were looking for on the Flying W farms, because that's where this whole search was today. Honestly, y'all, the only reason I'm doing this episode is to show you the inside of Flying W farms. I could have made this a YouTube short. So the gun list at the center of the argument before the jury was brought in this morning was not revealed to the public until Jake's bond hearing. He said they safeguard that information in case somebody comes forward and says, hey, I know what gun Jake used. And so they don't say what guns were used in the murders or what was on that sheet. That way it can validate credibility to people that are giving tips. So then that turns into the media being interested in the autopsy reports and how they sealed those, because the same reason. They didn't want certain information out there just about the caliber weapons used, because that way you could get 50 callers who say, I know that a Glock 40 was used. I know a 1911 22 caliber rifle or long range rifle bullets or whatever were used. And then you got some credibility there because they're naming off things that were there. You let all this out, then, you can't tell what's valid and who's just repeating what they know. And that makes a lot of sense. Sometimes as trial watchers and justice seekers, we get really frustrated when things aren't released, but there are reasons behind that. I would rather, them not release autopsy reports and, then screw up a tip that could have led to their arrest, So they got a special judge and a clerk appointed in the case to handle search warrants and court orders specifically to the case, to the Roden and Hannah Gilley murders, to control the flow of information. They were sealed in a completely separate county. So it wasn't until July of 2017 that they realized a Walther Colt was used in the homicides. That's that gun that Jake used, that they talked to the manufacturer in Germany. So when Jake told these investigators that they were going to Alaska, they contacted Customs and Border Patrol and asked them if the Wagners would be able to take guns to Alaska with them. And they said no, they would have to go through an arms dealer. It's a whole thing. So either they shipped guns up there or got them, I'm sure they had guns up there. They knew there were none on Peterson as far as they knew, and they knew Billy had lived on Flying W Farm. So, of course, they got a search warrant. May 13th, 2017, there is a search warrant executed on Flying W Farms, Fredricka's property. And at this point, her husband was still alive. He was bedridden and was there, I believe, from the way it was indicated. So they had BCI investigators, deputies from Pike County, task force agent from Ohio Organized Task Force, SWAT, Ohio Prison Star Team, pretty much everybody they could bring in, because the property itself was huge, just very, very huge. And they knew they wouldn't be able to, number one, search it all. So they focused mainly on the outbuildings, the grounds, and the residents. And so with this witness, Ryan Scheider, pretty much everybody reported to him. So on cross exam, he was really quick. It says on the Walmart receipt, what else is on there? And he starts reading off good nights, which are pull-ups for like toddlers that aren't quite potty trained at night, wipes, gas relief, cough syrup. And then there was one thing I couldn't understand what he said. And then there's the voided entry of those athletic shoes. So the defense said only 2 pairs of athletic shoes were bought. He's like, correct. That's going to come in, y'all. Told you last episode. The defense said you and another agent had gone to Peterson around the 1-year anniversary of the murders to talk to Jake and Angela. And he said those were separate events. At one event, they talked to Jake alone. The next time, Jake and Angela were out there, as well as George briefly. So the first time they talked to Jake was April 2017 at the Peterson Road residence. And the defense asked, what was he doing when you arrived? And the guy's like, I don't know. I don't remember. And he said he talked to him near the fire pit. So the defense said, you recorded that? And he said, yeah, we aren't required to tell them we're recording. And so the defense is like, it's a secret recording. And the agent's like, no, I mean, not secret. And the defense is like, you didn't tell him you were recording, so it was a secret recording. Who cares? And so finally the dude's like, right, yeah, okay. Okay, by the way, Joe Pesci without the New York accent, 100%. Other people are saying it. The defense says Jake lied to you, and the agent was like, I need more details of what you're talking about. The defense says he didn't admit to the crimes, and he said, the agent said, I don't know if I asked him if he did it. The defense says, are you telling us he was truthful? And so the agent was like, I need to know specifically what you're talking about. And the defense said, did you ask him who he thought did it? And the agent said, I don't know about that one, that particular meeting, maybe the next one. We know at one point, one of the agents asked what kind of penalty. And Jake said, well, it depends on if they're the shooter, which is kind of weird, but That's what Jake said. The defense says, okay, let's talk about the May 3rd one. And so George, Jake, and Angela were loading that livestock trailer. This is May 3rd. So this is very close to when they're moving to Alaska. And the defense says, in that interview, you recorded it, and the agent, George isn't on that recording. And the agent said, no, he excused himself. He left. If you remember, that's when George texted Billy, don't come home until I'll let you know we have company. So that's why George excused himself, because he not only texted his dad on one phone, but two. The same message. The defense says he didn't say anything that was on the recording. You didn't follow him? And the agent said, correct. The defense says, is that when Jake told you they were going to Alaska? And the agent said, I actually think he mentioned something in April. The defense says Jake told you in a May conversation these belongings would be stored and they were going to Alaska. He said, yes. Not the items, they were going. I should have written that better. The defense said, did he say where all these trailers would be stored? And they said it was on the Brown properties or near the Brown residence. And the defense says, and that's where it was found, correct? And he says, yeah. The defense says you asked Jake and Angela who he thought committed the crimes, and they didn't offer the name. They lied to you. At this point, Scheider's over Parker. Like, literally, I think you could tell he was over it big time. So moving on, the defense says you talk about the June 2017, June 19th, 2017. It's the numbers, y'all. Press release a year after the murders, and you did the second search warrant so the public is getting information about the case. And the investigator said no information would they have been able to obtain other than we're doing the search warrant. The defense says, did you question them about where they got the information? And he's like, no, I was too busy. And the defense says there were leaks about the case to the public. And the agent really, you could tell, was offended at this point. And he said a neighbor could have called. He said it didn't have to come from a leak. And the defense ends with, you never asked George for his phone. And he said no, which I find very curious because you're talking about the whole family. You know this family's cult-like. You know they make decisions together. You've heard this at this point. I don't know why they wouldn't ask for George's phone. So on redirect, the prosecution said, did they explain this as a recon trip just to scout it out, not a move? And he said they were looking just for places, jobs. Billy was hesitant because his father was really sick. So the next witness was Brian White, Special Agent Brian White. He's number 2 on that list, 2 down. We've seen him before. And so he was the lead crime scene investigator at Flying W when they did the search warrant. And so when he learned they wanted to search, they got together, had to have a really big plan because of how large the property was. And so they show some photos of the outside, and you see just little outbuildings, places for animals, livestock, that kind of thing. And so they show they show a lot of them. I didn't put half of them on here. I'll put the link in the description, by the way. They found some cartridge casings that were 22 caliber on the property, 9mm, none of those relevant to the murders. They did send the casings to the BCI lab. And so the defense comes up. The photos you reviewed, those aren't all. He said, and it's 2,000 acres. And he said, I was told 1,000. So the defense says you were shown the main house. So let's go inside the house there. I have a few pictures of inside Flying W Farms. You show the main house, outbuildings, and barns. Did you take photos of other areas that you haven't shown? And he said, yes. So the defense says this is a working farm with livestock and the cartridges. Any idea how long they were there? And he said, no. So the defense says this was May of 2017, and you would agree it's not abnormal to find casings on a working farm, and you can't say they're related to the aggravated murders a year before. And he said, I agree, you can't. So the defense said you can't search every inch of that property, and it's possible people could hide things there and you couldn't find it. And he said, correct. The last question by the defense, on the casings, you make the determination of what is connected to a crime scene. And he said, no, I collect the evidence. It becomes part of the investigation. And wherever that takes it, meaning whatever department gets that piece of evidence next. He said, my job is to collect potential evidence. So the next witness is Perry Roser with BCI. He was with the crime scene unit and he collected evidence inside the house. Very cluttered. I don't know how people live so cluttered. It would drive me bonkers, but okay, that's their thing. They labeled the rooms by letter. The house was very large and there was a young woman on the property and also Fredricka. They thought maybe an older man, but couldn't say for sure. So there's guns everywhere in this house, y'all. It's all over the place, taken into evidence. We go through the process of elimination. And so they show these 9mm with Grim Reaper grips, and those were actually Georgia's. Both of those were registered to Georgia, I believe. And they were, one was different. We get to that in a minute. They present the 9mm. It's a Beretta that George bought on the 27th of April, 2016, 5 days after the murders. They did a blind DNA swab on that gun, never said what the results of that was. So they're setting that up, I think, for the DNA person to come back in and tell whether or not they swabbed all these guns. But even if they found DNA, y'all, that's such a stretch. Like you could say, well, that's Billy lived there. The boys were there all the time. Their DNA is going to be on those guns. So they found documents in room J. They still haven't identified whose room was whose, which there was a shipment notification from opticplanet.com. That's a hunting gear website. Something was billed and shipped to Fredricka Wagner. They also showed some camouflage clothing with blood stains with a presumptive positive field test. The state had the lab report there, didn't reveal the results of that. I'm not sure that they're going to find any DNA because I thought that the whole thing was that Jake admitted to burning the clothes they wore the night of the murder. So they did a lot of things today where they left it very open-ended, and I think you're going to lose the jury on that. Because at this point, they're seeing gun after gun after gun. And then they're hearing, no, okay, this caliber wasn't used in the murders. And it was very repetitive, just different looking guns. So leaving a lot of this stuff, I mean, I look at things as a juror because I'm not a lawyer. I'm not, a judge. So I look at things as kind of a layperson. If I were sitting on that jury, I would have been over it. And I would be like, why aren't you telling us what the results? Because here's the thing. Nobody's going to remember all these little things if they introduce the DNA swabs. Go ahead and get it done now. Like put the baby to bed because what we're hearing is it wasn't used in the murders. But, at least say whose DNA was on it if you're gonna. I mean, or why even bring up that they sent it to the lab? I guess they're just showing their steps in being very thorough in the investigation. I just found it was, like I said, 5-minute stipulation, y'all. It could have been done. On cross-exam, you took all the photos inside. How many rooms were there? And he said there were 9, 10, maybe 11. How many people were living there? He said, I don't know. He said, you testified to a room A, J, and D. And do you know whose room was whose? And he said, no. Then he asked, was there a bedridden man living there? And he said, yes. His room was off the kitchen, kind of just right off to the kitchen. And then the defense says every bit of evidence you collected was gathered from 3 rooms on the first floor. They also found the documents. Were they in an office? And I believe he said there was a desk in there. So the defense says you testified about the 9mm Beretta purchase and the photos. And in the photos, there were aftermarket grips to dress it up. And he said, right. And the defense says, do you know who that gun belonged to? He said, no. I could have swore one of them or maybe both were George's. I know one of them was. And so the defense says, you're not suggesting any of these guns were used in the murders. And he says, no. He also has him reading the shipping label to Fredricka from Optic Planet. So then we have Matt White from BCI Ballistics recalled. There's a ton of objections. He goes gun to gun to gun and says, nope. Wasn't a match. And so on George's guns with the Grim Reaper, one barrel is threaded and the other isn't. And they point out that you can take the threads are on the outside of the barrel, which you can attach a suppressor to, which kind of helps with kickback or like a silencer. But it wasn't used in the murders. And so I think with this especially, they're maybe just trying to paint George in a bad light or as being heartless. But again, if you're looking at it from like evidence standpoint, it wasn't used in the murder. So I just kind of felt like it was a waste of a day to me. Maybe they're going somewhere with it. Who knows? So of course the defense is like, do you know who owned the guns? Were any of them used in the murders? You ID'd a 40 caliber from the crime scene. Yep. 1 in 4. Do you know what kind of a gun? The ballistic expert says a Glock pistol. And then the defense says on this list, there's a Beretta for a 40 caliber. So he's just saying like, essentially this list don't matter. On redirect, were you provided all the guns collected at Flying W? And he said no. And I don't know why they asked this. They wanted to know if that was a 12 gauge or a 50 caliber. And he said, I don't know if that was collected. Literally, that was it, y'all. And I stretched it out to get an episode out of this just because I really don't like doubling up, because if tomorrow's a really busy day testimony wise, then I'm adding 25, 30 minutes on and it becomes over an hour episode. Takes forever to upload. So I did this one. I think tomorrow before we start in Wagner, I want to do just what we know on the missing child from Savannah, Quentin Simon. 1.5-year-old missing from his playpen in the house. Lots of things are strange surrounding all this, of course, because the truth of the matter is it does happen, but it's super rare. Somebody just busts up in your house and takes your kid, and especially the one you went back to sleep while he was in the playpen for 3 hours. But I'm going to save that one for tomorrow. So anyways, all right, guys, I'm out of here. We will see you tomorrow. I'll be back, hopefully covering some interesting testimony tomorrow. I can't do guns again, y'all. If they start in with the guns and the ballistics, I'm waxing my floors. All right, we'll see you tomorrow.
With Lucky Land Slots, you can get lucky just about anywhere.
Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to... Has anyone seen the bride and groom?
Sorry, we're here. We were getting lucky in the limo and we lost track of time.
No, Lucky Land Casino, with cash prizes that add up quicker than a guest registry.
In that case, I pronounce you lucky.
Play for free at LuckyLandSlots.com. Daily bonuses are waiting. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18+. Terms and conditions apply. See website for details.
With no fees or minimums and no overdraft fees, banking with Capital One is the easiest decision in the history of decisions. Even easier than choosing to keep the Grinch away from the toy drive.
Who's going to deliver the toys to the kids?
What about me, the Grinch?
No.
Yep, even easier than that.
You steal the presents one time.
With no fees or minimums and no overdraft fees, is it even a decision? That's banking reimagined. What's in your wallet?
Terms apply. Capital One NA, member FDIC. Copyright Dr. Seuss Enterprises. Copyright Turner Entertainment Company.